Hey there, welcome to episode 52 of the FFS Talk audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. We are recording this episode on Thursday, November 21st, 2024. The time is approximately 1:40 p.m., if you're curious. Today's episode is called Logic and Reasoning. I could have been humorous, maybe not funny, and called it Logic or Reasoning, or even Logic exclusive or reasoning, but we're sticking with the and. If you are not familiar with FFS Talk, it is an audio program dedicated to discussing or monologuing about what works, what doesn't, and what we can do about it across a variety of topics. If ever there was an audio program, a podcast, that cries out for guests and mild debate, it's this one. So, as luck would have it, this is the end of season 0, episode 52. Season 1 will be episode 53. It will commence next week. So, aside from this mention, it will make almost no difference to you. But I will say, I will endeavor to get guests going if we can get reach, if we can get some more engagement in general with this audio program. I have not mentioned it so much on this program, but if you ever listen to Cafe Genius Impresarios, you will hear my discussion about my current startup effort, which is about information sharing, including finding content creators in your local area. The Greater Vegas area has many content creators. Where would you even begin to look for them? Oh, well, Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and Twitter and maybe elsewhere. Who knows? So make it a little bit easier to locate, discover, follow. We'll see what happens. But if you have never listened to the FFS Talk audio program, or just in case you forgot, what does FFS stand for? Well, it's an abbreviation for an Irish expression. I'm sure other people say it as well, but I believe Irish people are born saying this, which I will not say here, keeping it clean, but I believe they're born saying it. They learn how to say Guinness, this, and then maybe ma. I kid. If you don't know what it means, you got to hang out with some more Irish people, as I have. And of course, everyone is a little bit Irish, even outside of March. Episode 52. Today's the 21st. Let us begin. Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you are able to locate the show notes within the episode description. You will have a summary, and then there will be 3 links this time that are appropriate for the show. I did not go totally crazy. Surely I could have provided links to logic and reasoning articles and mathematical logic. Combinatorial logic is always good. Everything comes down to combinatorial logic eventually. Keeping it light. This episode may not even be the usual hour or so. We'll find out. But the sooner we start, the sooner we'll end. And so let us do that. The summary of today's episode, the end of season 0. And with all the tumult in the news and social media today, why not end season 0 with some thinking about thinking? You saw what he did there. Today's links, the shameless self-promotion pair, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. You are under no obligation to spend any money at either of these, though you certainly may if you like. Any proceeds that flow through these are applied to the coffee or coffee-related devices that help enable the production of these various works. The buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo profile page, which you will land on initially if you go to that URL I just uttered, has a collection of links to my various audio programs, GitHub repositories, the fact that I use Zella and Cash App, if you like. What else is on there? I'm not looking at it right now. There's a couple other things. My favorite coffee beans. Yeah. Those are not affiliate links, by the way. The take home, I just use this as a landing spot. And in fact, on Monday this very week, so would that be 17 November, I launched Buy Me an Update, which is a very brief audio clip of sorts. The first one was about 4 minutes. try to keep it in the 2 to 4 minute range every week. We'll kick off the week with a little review and possibly some announcements that would relate to all of my audio programs or other projects, so I can do that in one place. And it's a little extra something. Why not? I'm experimenting with these two platforms. They are frequently used by open source developers and just people working on projects or other such things. Both Buy Me a Coffee, probably more so, and Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/Hugo, which I'm sure is pronounced coffee, but to differentiate, Ko-fi. That's my pronunciation. I'm sure people are generally familiar with these. They've been around for a while, and I've had accounts with both of them for probably 4 years, maybe, give or take. I think 5 people have dropped some money in the tip jar on the Buy Me a Coffee site, so not paying the bills, but I did spend that money on coffee. Never Split the Difference, a fine book which I recommend you read. It doesn't actually have a ton to do with today's episode, but I will say this, and it's blackswanltd.com/never-split-the-difference. It's the FBI hostage negotiator. His last name is Voss. What's his first name? Hey, you can visit the website and you'll learn that. Did I leave the window open? Possibly not. Black Swan, Never Split the Difference by Negotiating as If Your Life Depends on It by Chris Voss. Yeah, Chris, C-H-R-I-S. Chris Voss. It's a very interesting book. The interesting thing as it relates to logic and reasoning, he first of all, he goes into the sort of the psychology and the game theory, if you will, literally the payoff matrix, but expressed in terms of actual negotiation, which is a game in the game theory sense. But he does go into some detail about the two sort of layers that you have to deal with a human. The first layer is the emotional brain, if you like. And he has names for them. I haven't read the book in a while. I have the book, but I'll leave it to you to learn these interesting facts. But there's the emotional response, the emotional consideration. This is probably biologically or evolutionarily adapted over however many generations. Your emotions will hopefully protect you. Your initial response to a shadow moving strangely or a weird noise is a kind of a fight or flight or like initial concern, and you can feel yourself doing this almost certainly. Your initial shock or jump scare, right? If you're watching a scary movie, that emotional or sort of visceral response. And then there's oh, wait a minute, that's just that's the door in the basement that I've been meaning to lubricate, or it's the washing machine. It just converted or the cycle just changed over to whatever, right? There's always a logical or sort of, let's call it logical. Why not? A reasoned response. So it's not emotional, it's calculated, it's logical. So you could, once you've had a reflexive, motion, maybe you heard that noise and you literally jumped, or you ran, you skedaddled, and then you pause and oh wait, I know what that is. So your reasoning mind takes over. When you're negotiating with somebody, especially in a hostage situation, which is Chris Voss's claim to fame. Like I said, it's a pretty interesting book. He goes into detail about how you have to know which part of the person you're dealing with at any particular time. You can appeal to their emotional response. You can appeal to their thinking brain, their thinking response, right? Being logical doesn't always work if they're fraught. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I have the 5 steps of hostage negotiation. 1 is active listening. 2 is establish empathy. These are emotional, right? These are appeals to emotion. Like, I can hear you. You tell me what's up. I'm listening. And then establish that empathy so they know that you actually care. Develop a rapport. Become comfortable interacting. Make a call to action. That's where you actually say, okay, it's time to let some people go. It's time to turn yourself in, etc. You've made the emotional pleas, and now you have to start moving into a logical, hey, the best way to go let's do the math, turn yourself in, or let the people go, etc. And then the fifth step is basically resolution. It's how things eventually come to an end, hopefully a reasonably happy one. I believe I got those right. That's just from memory. It's some of that's in there. I don't think he goes through them directly in the 5 steps, but you can find articles about that. You just look for 5 steps of hostage negotiation from the FBI. So that's just a plug. It's not an affiliate link or anything. It's just a link directly to the author's website, in fact. And you can take it from there. So let's get started. So we can be finished. And by the way, there will be an episode 53, the beginning of season 1, because programmers start counting at 0. Season 0 ending today. Season 1 will be published on Thanksgiving. How's that? I'm not getting you a turkey, but something. So briefly, this was, I'm not going to talk about election too much in any of my programs or politics in general as far as is reasonable. I'm sure they will come up here and there as they impact the things that I'm actually talking about. But I was actually inspired to talk about this because of a statement that an actual attorney made regarding some ballot stuff. I think that's the actual term, ballot stuff. So that prompted me to say, well, how on earth are we in this place with actual attorneys? Which I'm saying because attorneys, if I'm not mistaken, I've never attended law school, but from what I understand, to get your JD, to become an attorney, and the attorney in question, who I will not name, I'm not going to refer to the show. I don't want to send you there. I don't want to dive into this too much, but it did inspire the pondering. To get your JD, I believe there is a certain amount of logic, formal logic education taught in law school, in the school of law that you might attend. And the reason is logic figures heavily into argumentation, like presenting an argument, presenting the case, presenting the evidence, evaluating evidence, determining whether evidence actually makes sense, if it doesn't contradict. I have referred to this somewhere, the notion which Malcolm Gladwell describes in one of his books, and I don't even remember which book. We're keeping it brief today, though, so he differentiates 2 scenarios, labeling them puzzle and mystery, and I think those are common use, but they're not formal. I don't think they're formal declarations of meaning, unlike complication and complexity. Those are real things. You can solve a puzzle. If you envision a jigsaw puzzle, for example, that's the easiest version of this, I think. Every time you put a piece correctly placed in the jigsaw puzzle, you are one piece closer to solving the puzzle, to completing it. So every piece, so long as you place it correctly, brings you one step closer to completion, to the solution. Right? If you place a piece incorrectly, it may not become apparent immediately, but it will become apparent soon, and then you kind of self-correct. So every piece, even with a little bit of distraction, is essentially a forward march towards solution. A mystery, on the other hand, because a mystery may be a crime, for example, may have different pieces of evidence, which may point to different potential suspects or potential cause or potential scenario or how things unfolded, etc. There could be documents, there could be photos or video, there could be audio, there could be eyewitness accounts, all these things. And you'll find, as you gather the evidence in the mystery, that some of the evidence contradicts and it doesn't make logical sense, right? For example, you saw this person at 2 p.m. exiting a retail establishment and getting into a car of a particular color. But I have another statement. Maybe you're just saying this to your collaborators, not to the witnesses. I have another person that said at 2 p.m. they saw the very same person getting into a different car on the other side of town. So you have a contradiction. They can't both be true, and it's important to understand that. Otherwise, you end up presenting a case that's completely illogical. So it's emotional time for some, for many actually, and where the 2020 election had a more visceral reaction on the side that did not win. For 2024, we have a lot of pearl clutching, as the saying goes, hand wringing, obviously some finger pointing. Probably there will be more. What did they do wrong? What did she do wrong? Obviously, there are various gender and cultural and racial identities that are thrown around. So it's the country we live in, unfortunately. And while the conspiracy theories have already been spreading quite quickly, probably before the final ballot was cast on election day, they were cooking. The analysis and the keepers of calm are really making the analysis. No, the analysts. Analysts. I should correct that. The analysts. The analysts and the keepers of calm are really making emotional appeals and rationalizations where they should not be doing this. So in one, and only one, because I'm steering away from the current political tumult, that's the path I'm staying on, away. For example, an actual attorney says something so silly that it makes me doubt retroactively a lot of what this person has been saying from some time prior to the actual election itself. He's actually a well-regarded and has found, I'll say himself, has found himself positioned in the process so that he actually has some sway with some things, and so he's an authoritative source of some information, which again made me kind of scratch my head a little bit. Regarding a conspiracy theory about vote splits, and a vote split is when you one person casts one ballot for maybe the president at the top of the ballot and in one party, but then votes for other parties or seemingly contradictory selections in what you call a down ballot, right? So you may vote Republican at the top, and then for your local, senator, House representatives for Congress, House of Representatives, or for maybe state governance and so on, you may vote for candidate or candidates in a different political party, and that throws people for a loop sometimes. Sometimes it's that because people just make a choice. It's pretty defensible, right? And it would have been interesting had he stuck to the actual rational defense, which makes sense. You want to vote for who you want to vote for, and maybe you don't vote along party lines, or maybe so he does end, or he after this excerpt, which I'm about to read, he does move on into some more reasonable possibilities. So in responding to a question about the split ballot, so is essentially why are there people who voted for one party at the top and then other parties at the bottom? Specifically in the scenario, in the context of the scenario, it was why did some people vote for the Republican candidates but voted for Democratic candidates for the rest of the ballot? That doesn't make sense. So in response, the actual attorney hand-waved this excerpted word salad, which I am quoting, and I'm quoting it from the transcript, which may include some error, but it also includes some impure words, not bad words, but just some ums and uhs, essentially. Look, in some ways, that actually proves that the system wasn't rigged, right? I mean, if they were going to rig, they is unspecified, if they were going to rig the system, if there was going to be some grand conspiracy, which there was not, you would have expected to see it ticket wide. The fact that the fact that in a number of swing states where Kamala Harris lost, nearly Democrats down ballot performed better. Probably nearly all Democrats down ballot performed better than her. And by the way, that's consistent with what the polling looked like before the election. So this is not a surprise, right? We saw polls before the election and then he continues on and then starts breaking down some examples and he does use Nevada as one of the examples. Our Democratic Senator, Jackie Rosen, won out over the Republican candidate's name escapes me. I'm totally spacing out. But anyway, so this was an example where the Republican president tally went towards, or the electoral college votes went to the Republicans based on the popular vote in the state, yet Jackie Rosen maintained or enters now her second term, Democratic senator in the federal Senate, in the United States Senate. And then state representation kind of leaned also Democrat. We have a Republican governor, so that makes for a contentious state government process, which is probably not awful sometimes. We'll leave it there. So the problem is this is a form of protection, a rationalization that is emotionally satisfying. Well, of course they couldn't have done it because they would have done other things if they had done it. They would, pardon me. Sorry about that. I had to pause and get a little water. My voice always dries out. So it's a form of protection, as I was saying. It's a rationalization. It makes you feel better to think, wow, of course that couldn't have happened because they would have done other things. So clearly they didn't, whoever they might be. This is not logical, though it satisfies a sympathetic need to identify with a possible explanation, right? That's your emotional response is they cheated in some way because obviously why did the numbers go like this and like that and so on? And then when you think about it, and then someone says something comforting like they couldn't have cheated, they would have cheated all the way. In this particular case, the hand wave is a good segue into the state races and state issues and other familiar details and that were known up to the point in time when this discussion was happening. It was on YouTube concerning the races, the electoral races, the ongoing counts, which have since been approaching completion. They may even be done by now. I think they have to be done by December 7th or 6th or 10th or something like that. So there's still time, but we want an answer now. So if the discussion were more focused on conspiracies, this might be the entrance of a rabbit hole down which an entire hour or two of YouTube content might be created. But if they didn't cheat, then they would have cheated, and then they would have also not cheated at the same time, but then they would have had to uncheat the cheat, and it's sort of like if you've ever seen Princess Bride, the iocane powder meeting that ends poorly for the Sicilian. It's a good scene if you've never seen it. If we accept appeals to emotion like this, and I'm saying it's an appeal to emotion because the statement that the attorney makes about this faux logic is not proven. It's not based on reality. There's no evidence to support the contention. He's just saying, they would have cheated all the way. They wouldn't have just cheated in one place. And you could argue, so the Princess Bride scenario is surely if they would have cheated at the top of the ticket, they would have cheated at the bottom or throughout the ticket. But then you would have thought that. So I will only cheat at the top and I will not cheat at the bottom. But then you would have thought of that. So I will cheat at the top, knowing that you will think that I have not cheated, and so on and so on. So it's fun to go around in circles like that, but you need to actually consider the alternative, right? Surely they wouldn't have cheated on only the top of the ticket, or rigged it, or however you want to view it. But there's almost certainly more to any of these considerations. And again, he does go into some of the state races as a sort of a form of support for the notion that the down ballot votes could differ, ballot splitting as they call it. But the initial statement is just simply illogical. And I will give a non-election related example, and then we can get off the politics tip. I don't know if that was plosive. So if we accept the appeals to emotion, we find ourselves sympathetic to the proposed solution or rationalization. We don't look beyond this supposition to consider the logical alternatives. So there may actually be rigging, right? I'm not saying there is. But if you convince yourself, if it just feels right that, they would have cheated on the whole ballot, not just one part of it, then you kind of let yourself off the hook. You can feel comfortable about moving on. They would have done something else. It may actually mask a more detailed investigation into possibilities, although in this case, it would be difficult to say without actual evidence that there is anything about this they altering ballots. But who knows? Who knows? certainly not from that logical assessment. But this can lead to some poor decisions, or at best, frustration and disappointment, and maybe even feelings of betrayal along the trip down this rabbit hole. So once again, if you accept the hand wave logical argument as presented here by this attorney, you may still find yourself saying, but well, then what happened? This doesn't really tell me what happened. It only tells me what probably didn't happen. Maybe. So it's not great. It's not a great way to go. And I know attorneys are supposed to be versed in logic, so I was disappointed, and it made me want to think and maybe create a whole audio program episode about this very thing. So a super simple analog, so we don't have to talk about ballots. So let's back away from the political angst and offer a similar example. Suppose your neighborhood has a porch pirate problem, or it might. Your neighborhood has no cameras nor other sensors, so we have to look at the porches and the packages left on them, and we note that some porches that should have packages do not have the expected number of packages. Sorry, I had to pause again. If you heard the Amazon smart speaker tone notification thing, I was checking on something there from that. So your neighborhood does not have cameras or any other security, no Nest cameras or anything. So are packages going missing? Do you have porch pirates? We don't know. Some porches had one package. Now some of those have 0. Other porches had many packages. Now some of those porches are missing 1 package for each case. This happens over the course of several days, and we have physical packages on physical porches. We have delivery notifications to check against. We don't necessarily know that there were packages on the porches that indicated 1 package. We only have the packages we can see. Maybe we weren't there, nobody was around to witness. So we know we got a delivery notification. We can compare, hey, I have a delivery notice of 1 package and I have 0 packages on my porch. So let's ponder some possibilities. Clearly, if someone were stealing packages, a true porch pirate, they would take all of the packages, and since they didn't, there can't possibly be a porch pirate operating here. And we could just leave it at that. And once again, that's very frustrating and doesn't really answer the concern. And after this, I'll tell you a true story that's almost exactly like this. So here we have they didn't cheat on the ballots because, we already went into that. So clearly they didn't take all of the packages, so there must be no one taking any of the packages. But if we actually if we actually look at the porches with missing packages, we notice that all of the delivery notifications, usually sent via an email or maybe a text message or via carrier-specific mobile application, for example, which correspond with missing packages, are from a single carrier. Maybe there is a porch pirate working for the carrier, non-delivering those packages. That would be interesting, and I'm sure that has happened. Maybe our delivery driver for that carrier for the week in question somehow systematically delivered packages to the correct street addresses, but on the incorrect streets. This has also happened. Maybe there is something else to examine. What other data do we have, and can we get more? See, we could have stopped at that initial scenario, right? They didn't take all the packages, therefore nobody's taking any packages. That doesn't line up, though. It still leaves people wanting. But the ballots. So the first proposal in this contrived example makes no sense, not on its face. But it actually does make sense if any, or even all, if everything about the other possibilities turns out to be true in some way, or if there's a variation on one of those. They are viable. And in fact, with some additional examination, it is possible to reach a conclusion to this puzzle by interviewing the delivery driver in question and determining, in my contrived example, where the deliveries went. In this fake example, I can't emphasize that enough, totally made up. It turns out that the carrier had a software bug so that delivery notifications were sent out when the packages were shipped by the sender. So the driver didn't even have any idea that you were receiving a delivery notification. There was no package to deliver. And you could determine this logically by saying, common carrier. I don't mean that in a technical sense. I just mean the same carrier. Everybody had a delivery notification. The packages were gone. But indeed, somebody didn't take all packages. So on the face of it, that does seem odd. Now, there could have been a possibility that someone was seeking packages of a particular size. Maybe they would shake them. They would weigh them. Like, oh, we only want heavy. We only want packages in boxes, not in the sort of environmentally questionable plastic padded envelopes and whatnot, whatever various shippers use. But at the end of the day, we can stop at that simple layer of logic. And again, the attorney starts with, I wouldn't even have started with that first statement. That just doesn't make any sense. You would start with the, let's see what data we have, not with this simple and sort of ridiculous sounding and almost misleading assertion. They didn't steal all the packages, therefore there must not be a package thief. But again, it does turn out to be true. And the assertion by the attorney in the other example is probably true. But on the face of it, doesn't make any sense. So you really need some supporting information. The examples he gives are interesting, but they're not a detailed response, right? In this example I've contrived here, you are actually determining what really happened, not what possibly happened according to polls and like pre-election polling and maybe exit polling and whatnot. You can examine all these data, but you really want to look at actual ballots and actual turnout and actual. So really, when you have all of your data, all of your ducks in a row, you can make more rational statements and not go off the rails like this. Now, I will say, my real life example. This is an actual example. I did. I don't really get too many packages via USPS, but I did have, when I traveled quite a bit for work, I had the United States Postal Service, USPS, has a, what do they call it? It's a notification system where they take pictures of your mail and they email you photos of your mail that's being delivered. So here's what you should expect today. And it has a picture of a coupon circular or an actual real piece of mail from a thing of some sort, or a person even. Crazy. So an entire week, I received a daily update or a daily notification that I was receiving a package via the United States Postal Service. So on the first day, say Monday, go down to the mailbox and I'm like, I didn't order anything. That's strange. And there was no package. Got the delivery notification. So I had the warning, expect a package, and package has been delivered. No package. Second day, same thing. I left a note and I also filed a package hold or a delivery instruction update, I think it was. So I knew my postal carrier. So in the filing on the USPS website, I said, can you deliver this package not to a mailbox, but to the leasing office where I was living at the time, because my packages are not being found after they're delivered. So unfortunately, the postal carrier in question delivered the notice that was printed out to my mailbox, along with a fictitious package that ended up not being there. Yeah. So eventually, when I spoke to the postal inspector, they said two very disconcerting things. One, because again, these are not packages I ordered, so I wasn't even sure what they were. Well, if you didn't order them, and why are you worried about them? Which I thought was troubling. Because sometimes people send gifts or who knows? I don't know. I don't even know who to ask. I would eventually discover that they were shipped from Utah somewhere, but that's all I knew. And the second thing was package theft is a problem in Las Vegas. So these kinds of things can really happen. I could have said, well, I didn't order a package, therefore there couldn't have been a package stolen. So why worry about it? And that was the line of reasoning by the postal inspector, which is very encouraging. In this case, I don't have any more information, so I end with frustration and disappointment. That always wondering, whatever happened to those packages? Were there packages? I'll never know. They didn't take pictures of the packages. They only take pictures of the mail, the paper mail, like envelopes. Logic has its place. That's the important thing. Anyone who dabbles, anyone who dabbles in computer software development, like myself, or even some computer hardware development, and sometimes other systems really benefit from logic. You can implement logic in a variety of ways, mechanically, electrically, and sort of indirectly electrically through software. And there are other ways too. You can implement logical light gates. There's all kinds of stuff going on in the world of science. So if anyone who does this knows that conditional logic is one of the core principles. Pretty much everything has something of an if then else. You can implement it in a mechanical system with a little switch, so you know, when the garage door is open, if it trips this switch, then turn off the motor because it's at the all the way fully open position, right? So if tripped, then turn off motor. So these are very simple logic. They should have deterministic behaviors. They do the same thing given the same conditions. And along with logical and or and XOR, exclusive OR, which I made a joke about at the beginning of the episode, which you may not have picked up on or cared about. And a corresponding NOT operation, of course, and bitwise operators if you need. And these all allow for combinatorial logic. And you are able, what is it, the Thevenin equivalent? You can build anything if you have NAND or NOR gates. That's not and not or. So and or and exclusive or, and is very simple, or is very simple. If light on and light switch on, then if light switch on, say you have two light switches. So I'm making this up right now. Say you have two light switches and you want them both to be on, and the light will be on. So the two inputs are if light switch 1 on and light switch 2 on, then light on. So that's an AND gate or an AND logical operation. If light switch 1 on or light switch 2 on, then light on. If light switch 1 on exclusive or light switch 2 on, I'm totally confusing myself, sorry. Exclusive or, then, so exclusive or has a little trick. If both are on, then the light is not on. So it has to be one exclusive or the other, but not both. Pretty tricky. And then not, you can throw that in there and say if light switch 1 on and not light switch 2 on, right? You can unwind all of these. So there's always like an if then else. And these are true in life in general. If you are ever using an application on your mobile device or your computer and it crashes or behaves badly, or if you find some external service not doing something or doing something strange, there can be maybe something as simple, or as complicated or even as complex as a logic error where some piece of code that is measuring and comparing conditions, if this, then that, and if these 25 things, then these other 25 things, and it can be quite complicated. And perhaps it finds a null scenario where there's no way to handle the net condition. What if there's a third light switch in my scenario and it's not handled? So I turn on light switch 3 is on, but nothing happens. And I've tried the light switch 1 and 2 in different combinations and the light works with 1 and 2, but if I do 3, it doesn't. So that's maybe somebody forgot, or there's just what we call the technical term, a bug. So this is where logic can break down, is when you don't consider all the possibilities, or you make bad assumptions, or you presume that there are no porch pirates because not all the packages were stolen, right? That would be sort of all packages would be and. All packages, this package and this package and this package and this package are stolen, then there's a porch pirate. So if you have that sort of simple condition, then you may make an unsupported assertion that there must not be a porch pirate. You could include other things like and no software bugs in notification scheme. But just on the face of it, again, you can come up with a strange potential outcome that is confusing, perhaps. Even without computers, we are always and continuously making logical assessments. Everyone is. When we do anything from operating a vehicle, think about it. You're always comparing if this and that, if that car stops and that car doesn't, if the person is crossing the street or the light is blinking. These are logical. Of course, there's an emotional component. There's adrenaline sometimes if you slam on your brakes and whatnot. But at the end of the day, you're making logical assessments. You're combining different pieces of information. You're fusing your sensor data, you could say. You could be preparing a food or drink, and you have to make decisions about quantities and alternative ingredients and whether things are seasoned correctly, or if a drink tastes correct, or if you have to modified or something, or learning something new, especially if you're gaining knowledge or gaining new insights, you're probably making logical considerations. Like, in order to learn something, if this is true, then that also must be true, and so on. And of course, many, many other activities. We may make logical comparisons and decisions unconsciously. And in fact, we probably do most of the time. We are always making them. I have another example. Let's talk about movie fans. Dissecting movies, especially if the movie or movies, like sequels or a cinematic universe, were popular when the people that are doing this were younger. They're true fans. The franchise or intellectual property is rebooted or extended with sequels or prequels, so they have an opportunity to re-engage with their their memories. The Star Wars universe, of course, the Star Trek collection of different attempts at something. These are easy examples. There are others like Alien, now that Alien Romulus had just come out, I think in August. Predator, the whole Predator series, which is apparently getting some more additions. All these have been picked apart. The Marvel Cinematic Universe and its 100 movies. There's always great focus, much commentary. I don't want to point out anyone in particular. Suffice to say that they are quite busy on YouTube, giving detailed plot critiques, describing continuity errors, asserting the presence of plot holes, or maybe the plot holes don't matter. That's one assertion by some. And highlighting retroactive continuity fixes across prequels and sequels. The level of dedication to this logical and critical analysis of mere movies is both impressive and disconcerting. This is a great example for consideration, since these are some very enthusiastic analysts, so invested in measuring and comparing the finest details. They are often nowhere near so focused on this level, that they nowhere near focus this level of attention, if I can speak. We're getting near the end, I promise. In other matters, which we may presume when they speak on other topics. You don't get the same level of detail or critique when the people that perform these dissections talk about things that they have not dissected. Then they just come across as normal people with usually things to complain about. But when they really put their mind to it, they completely tear down plot lines and continuity, like I said, and they're constructing timelines, and they're making like, oh, look, here they did a voiceover after, I can't remember what the abbreviation is, but you bring in someone to say something, so that usually if you can't see their mouth moving, they can, or they're out of the frame, they can say something and it will fill in a detail, or they'll reshoot some scenes and whatnot. So there's always this very detailed analysis and assessment of why this movie sucks. And that's usually how things go, because it's not like the original. Okay, I'm editorializing a little bit, but the take home is this. When people want to apply their logic, they will go to great lengths. You'll find this also with conspiracy theories, although conspiracy theories sometimes don't match up. And so you end up disproving one to prove another, and so on. With movies, everybody has the same movie that they can watch, except for Blade Runner. There's like 25 different versions. But if you're watching the same movie, you can make the same assessments. You can all gather your impressions. You can point out an Easter egg, as they say, or you can point out a continuity problem that, oh, wait, no, that was retconned in the upcoming sequel. Or you had to read the comic book, or you had to play the video game to get the rest of that detail to, okay, sure. So, but the fact is, these are people that are willing to step completely into a logical analysis, whether things actually make sense, unlike our attorney friend earlier or the porch pirate scenario. Although in our porch pirate scenario, we did crack the case. So here you can have a gaggle of people who spend their time following up on initial assertions. Hey, this movie was great. No, it wasn't. Let me show you the 35 different reasons, and so on. So logical thinking can be seen in the wild, and you can watch it unfold when you watch anyone doing, not reaction videos, those are different. You have to watch somebody doing a very critical analysis. Not cinema sins either. That doesn't count. That's for entertainment. And they're usually way overboard. But this is a great example of the practical application of logical thinking, logical analysis. When you have a consistent basis of these, if you're looking at the same content, so you're examining the same information, and you can map out your assertions, you can say this and this must be true to make this true, and there's a plot hole here because this was not true when it should be. And you can actually point to these things, create a little map, a little timeline. You can collect a logical series of events that should have happened and then were not represented. And then invariably someone will find out, oh, there's a deleted scene that would have clarified all of this. So this is just a really easily accessible example of analytical thinking applied to something we can all consume fairly easily, movies. You can do the same thing with a book also. Man, my voice is really reaching the end of today's episode before I am. I've paused a couple of times, so we're getting there. One more little section here. So let's all be logical more often. Do you know you do not need to become a Vulcan? That's a Star Trek reference. But more logical thinking is not a bad thing, and more people might consider leaning into it more often. I had a professor in college. His name was Dr. Arthur Benjamin. He was known for he has a mathematical magic show. I think he used to teach kids how to, not finger math, but how to do math in their head. Some mental tricks to help you do the actual mathematical operations without forgetting or dropping numbers and so on. He's really into backgammon also. And he was a contestant on Scrabble because he was able to tell them the correct odds rather than the typical yet mistaken. We would have taken 2 for 3, but you have correctly pointed out it's 7 for 8 or whatever, right? 7 of 8. So he has suggested in the press, like out in the world, it's been a while. He said nobody should be teaching high school kids calculus. They should be teaching them probabilities and statistics and analytics. So people should be much more adept at logical analysis. Did I get it? A little improvement there, okay? Some water, we don't have to get into it. So Professor Benjamin was really big on combinatorial logic, the and the or and the exclusive or, and making assessments on combinatorial logic on the basis of combinatorial logic, which can be used to prove many things if you include this logical analysis. So he was a proponent of ditching calculus, which, well, even though you kind of use it because the physical world does show up in calculus and vice versa. If you've ever cut off a bus coming up to a red light, if you ever jump in front of it in your car, hopefully, and not a bicycle or on foot, and you hear the vehicle engine braking, it's because P equals MB. And you can do some math and derive forces and why does the vehicle have so much more momentum than you? Because it has big M. So calculus comes in handy in the world, but then you can just do high school physics and you're going to get some of it practically, if not mathematically. Maybe offer a bonus calculus program, but analytics, logic, these are important skills. It is often said that if people learned more about probability and statistics, then the casino industry would not be nearly as successful as it is. The language of logic can be fairly simple. I've already gone through some of it, and, or, XOR. But there is a need for more careful consideration of how the statements describing a logical evaluation are constructed. Hey, that's another notification from an Amazon product. Sorry about that. This is ultimately worthwhile to understand cause and effect, why things happen, why they do not. Some really exciting conspiracy theories fail, or they fall even, they fail simple logic tests, or they fall from credulity when they are compared among each other, when it becomes obvious that the assumptions and claims contradict, and so on. So you can take a really cool conspiracy, this has got to be it. And then you take another conspiracy theory, no, it's this one. And then you step through them and you go, this makes one assertion that's completely not true here. So when you actually do things like, wait, you can't just assume that there's no package theft if they didn't take all the packages. What if they only took some of the packages? So it's very easy to get stuck in the production by a street. Today's a banner day. It's very easy to get stuck in the loop of bogus logical analysis, of being illogical, of making poor assumptions or making assertions that don't connect across the information space. So, well, okay, there may be no porch pirate, I should say. But what is the problem? Just merely saying there isn't doesn't really address the problem. It offers a different path to go down, perhaps, but it is only the beginning of the analysis. It's not the end. It's not the reason to give up. And that was my USPS and the Postal Inspector example. They just shrugged their shoulders like, if you didn't order packages, then don't worry about it. These are all discontinuities in our world, and it can be very frustrating, like I said, and it can bring angst when things are happening and we don't have enough information to make a logical analysis, an assessment of what's probably happening, follow through to finding out what's really happening, and then sleep well knowing you figured it out. Perhaps we could gamify the process a bit more. By the way, logic is certainly present in game theory, but that is something completely different than gamifying. Or display logical considerations more explicitly so that any argument or discussion can be clearly stated and supported from the perspective of the audience, at least. I don't know if I've presented a cogent logical argument in this episode, but the bottom line is if you are interested in how things work and you take the time to learn about logical analysis, combinatorial logic, about logic in general, how to dissect, look for the facts, how they're related, which ones are conditionally coupled, and so on. You can learn all these things. Then, if those two things and more, there's probably more, then you will almost certainly have a better understanding of the world around you, and you will at least be able to make note of scenarios where the picture seems incomplete or some assessments are being made, some conclusions drawn based on bad data, bad analysis, contradictions, logical fallacies. Logical fallacies themselves are a whole different philosophical consideration. That is also worth looking into. But from a strictly combinatorial checkbox, if then else, this is true, this is false, therefore, and so on and so on. These are skills worth having, and you should pursue them. So the answer to the question, what can we do about it? Learn how logic works. And because you are already using logic all the time, it's not a big ask. You're not being told to learn calculus. When am I ever going to use calculus? There are some times. Don't cut off a bus. When am I ever going to use logic? Well, you're using it right now. You're trying to convince yourself that you don't need logic because you don't use logic. Therefore, you do need logic. I guess we can leave it there. My voice is really hanging on for the end here, but we are going to bring season 0 and this episode to a bumpy landing. Bring it in onto the field. Whoop. There we go. And thank you for listening as always. I really hope, since the package that is delivered is hopefully going to help with my voice and so on, my sinus reaction to whatever it is in the air in Vegas, it changes every day. You never know what you're going to get. It's not even like a box of chocolates. On that note, we'll see you for season 1 next week. Happy holidays. Happy everything. Keep your chin up. Keep your head down. I'll stop now. Take care.